For this week's political figure episode, you can get out a folding chair and hit yourself over the head with it. Because unlike WWE, what I'm about to tell you is not pretend. And if you haven't guessed it already, we're about to talk about Linda McMahon. Linda Marie Edwards was born October 4th, 1948 in New Bern, North Carolina. At 17 years old, she graduated from Havelock High School and then married 21-year-old Vince McMahon. And then she went to East Carolina University where she got a degree in French, pardon her bachelor's. After this, her and Vince started a career that mostly involved just sucking at life despite being relatively privileged children. Vince was a traveling cup salesman, which is apparently a thing, and she was a receptionist for a law firm. After Vince failed at being a cup salesman, he went to go work for Daddy, who owned the WWE. While working for Daddy at the WWE, he kept trying to win his daddy's love and prove that he was a big boy by starting a bunch of business ventures that continuously failed. One of these failed business ventures included financing Evel Knievel jumping a canyon, and not the one you're thinking of, a less grand canyon. And by 1976, they'd been subsisting off of welfare and food stamps and eventually filed for bankruptcy. Sorry, it's cold out. I'm not feeling it anymore. But you just can't keep a Nepo baby down. In less than 4 years after filing for bankruptcy, the McMahons bought the Cape Cod Coliseum in Massachusetts. They founded Titan Sports and started putting on random sporting events in their newly acquired Coliseum, while Linda cooked meatball subs for people watching shitty sport events. A few short years after that, Vince bought the WWF from his daddy, and Linda did business stuff for it. Now, having bootstrapped their way into a successful and functioning business by purchasing it from Daddy, the money started to roll in. And as they became wealthier and wealthier, they also became douchier and douchier. Like, for example, they started getting jealous that their entertainers got to go out there and pretend to wrestle, so they decided to join the fun by just going out and pretending to be employers. And to do that, they reclassified all of their talent as independent contractors. You know, so they didn't have to pay things like Social Security and workman's comp and payroll taxes and health insurance. And let's be real, a lot of the people getting into pro wrestling aren't exactly contract savvy, so it made it a lot easier to exploit them and give them shitty contracts as well. Speaking of exploiting the talent, they weren't exactly providing the safest working conditions either. They were investigated for allowing or encouraging steroid use after one of their actors, Chris Benoit, murdered his wife and children before hanging himself. And they're like, oh, it could have been roid rage because there was a bunch of steroids found at the murder scene. Then it turned out like almost half of the actors had tested positive for roids. But it turns out that Chris ended up murdering his wife and child before hanging himself because he was mentally unstable thanks to severe brain damage from taking real chair shots to the back of the head while performing for the McMahons. And this wasn't like in the 80s or some shit. This was in 2009. The McMahons were actually allowing their actors to be beat over the head with chairs by roid-raging men in spandex for real in the 21st century. Speaking of abuse, I'll give you 3 guesses to tell me what you think the WWE and the Catholic Church have in common. Did you only need one? Yeah, I figured you only needed the one. Apparently, there is a long history of sexual abuse and trafficking of boys and girls in the WWE. Allegedly. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, multiple wrestlers and the ring announcer were dismissed or resigned or let go for abusing the ring boys. In fact, Mel Phillips, the ring announcer, was actually fired for abusing the ring boys and then rehired under the condition that he, quote, stops chasing the boys. Through all of these years, Linda McMahon has been bragging about her business prowess, pointing to her management and administration of the WWE, so she was very hands-on with those decisions. Figuratively anyway, but who knows, could be literally. But it doesn't stop there because her husband Vinny has a litany of assault, abuse, and trafficking allegations against him personally as well. An investigation found that he's made over $12 million in hush money payments to 4 women for sexual misconduct. But wait, there's more. Another woman accused him of raping her in 1986. In 2006, a tanning salon employee accused him of groping and harassing her. In 2022, the board forced him to retire as the CEO of the WWE because of his misconduct, and he's currently being sued and investigated for assaulting and trafficking another one of his female employees. And I was going to go into some of the allegations in this lawsuit because they are descriptive and try to make light of them, but they are honestly just genuinely so disgusting. I don't think that I can do that, and I don't think it's appropriate. Like, Vince and Linda McMahon are disgusting people. Because Linda knew about this. She found out about the affair, and after Linda found out, they forced this poor girl into signing an NDA. However, that shit's illegal. You can't sexually assault somebody and then be like, here, sign this NDA, and I'm off the hook. But hey, no one's that shitty, right? They must have done some good stuff. Like donate to charity, perhaps? And you're absolutely right. They've donated quite a bit of money to charity, including $9 million to the Donald J. Trump Foundation between 2007 and 2009. You know, that one charitable fund that's done great work, like misappropriating funds for for veterans, never having any of its expenditures or activities approved by its board, soliciting donations without a license, giving tens of thousands of dollars in grants to made-up organizations, never paying its pledges for 9/11 grants, unethically donating to political campaigns, using hundreds of thousands of dollars of foundation money for personal expenditures, and using the organization to potentially commit tax fraud, and giving the money to organizations who would then turn around and rent Trump properties, and using foundation money to pay Donald Trump's personal debts and legal fees. And got off track. The list is very long of the charitable work that the Donald J. Trump Foundation did before it was closed down for how good it charitied. But anyway, moving on. I just told you that because obviously Linda and Vince McMahon are very philanthropic people, which makes up a little bit for all of, the sex trafficking and abuse and exploitation. Anyway, sorry. But by now you might be asking yourself, hey, this is a political figure episode, right? So while these people may be douchey, trashy, rapey, sleazy Nepo babies who made millions and millions of dollars exploiting giant men in spandex in a totally heterosexual way, I swear, why are they getting a political figure expose? Well, Linda, listen, honey, okay, I'm getting there. In 2009, she was seemingly randomly appointed to the Connecticut Board of Education by Governor Jody Rell. What was the motivation for that? I couldn't figure it out. Like, why would you appoint a random weird wrestling lady to a state board of education? That seems like a really dumb thing to do. And apparently it was, because a year later she was forced to resign because she lied about having a degree in education, which, she doesn't have. She has a degree in fucking French. And her excuse for the lie was she's like, oh, I was just confused. I thought my French degree was an education degree. Guys, I've been trying to come up with a joke to make fun of this for like 5 minutes, right? But all of the ridiculous shit I can come up with to make fun of the idiocy of her claiming that she thought her French degree was an education degree makes more sense than her saying that her French degree she thought was an education degree. Like, I was gonna be like, oh yeah, it was just like this one time my friend taught me how to fold this really cool paper airplane, and then I went and got a job being a commercial pilot at Delta. Then when they fired me for lying about being a licensed commercial pilot, I was like, oh sorry, I thought I was a licensed commercial pilot because I've got like 3 minutes of flight time on this really sweet paper airplane. But that makes more sense because at least they're still both about fucking airplanes. I mean, like, I get it, you can teach French with a French degree, which is probably why most people would get a French degree, but it's still not an education degree. Anyway, after her extensive political experience getting fired from the State Board of Education, she decided to run for the U.S. Senate. While running, she bragged about how she was funding her campaign with her own money, which she did, to the tune of $50 million. Which honestly, I'm amazed they still had to spend after all of the money Vince spent paying all of the women he's assaulted. I think it's like the third most expensive Senate campaign ever. And she lost. Because, she sucks. But she didn't let that deter her, and in 2012, she ran for U.S. Senate again, spending another $16 million of her own money, and this time, she lost again. Turns out 2 years later, she still sucked. Since she was being so unsuccessful at buying elections and getting herself into elected office, she just decided to start fundraising and donating to a bunch of Republican shit, figuring maybe she could buy her way into influence that way, and that did work. In 2016, Trump made her the head of the Small Business Administration, which I guess makes sense. Most small businesses fail, and she's got a lot of experience failing at small businesses. I would also be remiss if I didn't point out that this was the same administration that hired the CEO of Carl's Jr. to head up the Department of Labor. So in 2017, we had a WWE star and the CEO of Carl's Jr. in the White House. Like, guys, I'm really starting to feel like a bunch of rich assholes were just sitting around for a movie night, having a little sleepover, talking about what guys they think are cute, and they were watching Idiocracy, right? And then like when little girlies have their sleepovers and like prank call boys and stuff, and I feel like they were doing something like that, except in like rich supervillain mentality. And they're like, guys, what would be like the funniest prank ever? What if we pranked the whole country by actually doing Idiocracy? And then they did that. And then they're like, guys, it was so funny, they didn't even notice. We should do it again. Like a WWE star in the White House and the Department of Labor secretary brought to you by Carl's Jr. Like, you can't get that fucking on the nose without it being on purpose. You cannot convince me this is not all on purpose. Like, has anybody seen Ashton Kutcher lately? Because he's got to be ready to jump out. Anyway, so she did something in the first Trump administration. Nobody's exactly sure what, except for having a ton of conflicts of interest because she didn't relinquish her WWE stock. Then after that, she's chaired up a Trump super PAC and raised like $83 million for him. And now that we're doing the Trump thing again, he's nominated her to be Secretary of Education. Again. The woman who got fired from the Connecticut State Board of Education for not having a degree in education is now going to do that job again, except, for the whole country. But just to do my due diligence, I did go back and check, and it turns out that she now still has no relevant degrees or experience in education at all. I just cannot with the amount of how much I cannot with this timeline anymore. Ashton, are you in here? Ashton? Ashton? Dovey, have you seen a guy around here named Ashton? He's pretty tall. No? No? Okay. Motherfucker's gotta be around here somewhere.